Something is unraveling at the 2026 World Cup, and the world's greatest football nations are beginning to whisper what no one in power wants spoken out loud. The tournament that was sold as the greatest spectacle in the history of the sport, the grandest celebration football has ever attempted, is quietly turning into something else entirely. Something darker. Something the favorites never prepared for. Because the real opponent in this World Cup is not wearing a jersey. The real opponent does not appear on any tactical board. The real opponent cannot be marked, cannot be tackled, cannot be substituted. And right now, Spain, Argentina, and Brazil are starting to understand that the threat they fear most is the tournament itself. Stay with us, because what is happening behind the scenes of this expanded 48-team World Cup is the kind of story that reshapes how we look at modern football forever. 3 host nations, 16 cities, thousands of miles of travel, temperatures climbing past anything athletes are built to endure, humidity thick enough to choke a sprint, hydration breaks that interrupt rhythm, an extra match for any team daring to reach the final, and a calendar already so bloated, so brutal, so unforgiving that stars arrive to this tournament not fresh, not sharpened, not ready, but exhausted before a single ball was kicked. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why the favorites are not just chasing glory anymore. They are fighting to survive. And if you want the full picture of how this crisis is unfolding in real time, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because what we are about to uncover changes the way you see every match from here on out. Here is the central contradiction nobody at FIFA wants you to focus on. The tournament was promised as the biggest, the boldest, the most inclusive World Cup ever staged. A celebration stretching from the snowy edges of Canada to the searing heat of northern Mexico to the packed stadiums of the United States. More teams, more matches, more everything. But more is not always better. More can break players. More can break dreams. More can break the very sport it pretends to elevate. And the nations who have lifted this trophy more times than anyone else, the nations whose names are stitched into the soul of football, are now openly questioning whether this expanded format is a celebration or a setup for collapse. Think about that for a moment. Spain, the reigning European champion, arriving with a squad built on quick passing, lung-bursting pressing, relentless movement. A style that demands cool air, fresh legs, sharp minds. Now imagine that same squad asked to perform that style in midday sun, with humidity wrapping around them like wet cloth, in stadiums where the grass itself feels like it is sweating. Argentina, the defending world champion, carrying the weight of expectation and the fragile brilliance of an aging core that has already given everything for the country once before. And Brazil, the eternal favorite, the 5-time champion, returning with hunger, but also with a roster of players who have spent the entire season grinding through European leagues, Champions League nights, domestic cup runs, international qualifiers, and now this. The most demanding World Cup ever assembled. Pull back further, and the picture grows darker. Coaches are speaking out, quietly at first, then louder. They talk about hydration breaks that disrupt momentum. They talk about kickoff times scheduled to satisfy television markets on the other side of the planet, rather than the bodies of the athletes on the field. They talk about flights between host cities that stretch longer than some international journeys, eating into recovery, eating into training, eating into the small windows of rest that separate a champion from a casualty. They talk about an extra match, one more 90 minutes of war, demanded of whoever dares to reach the final. One more chance for injury. One more chance for exhaustion to win the battle that talent should have decided. And the players know. They feel it in their hamstrings before kickoff. They feel it in their calves at halftime. They feel it in the heaviness behind their eyes when the second extra time period begins and the body simply refuses to answer the mind. Some of the biggest names in the sport arrive to this tournament already carrying knocks, already nursing strains, already whispering to medical staff about pains they have hidden from the cameras. The modern footballer is asked to be a machine, but machines break too. And this World Cup is engineered, whether by accident or by design, to find the breaking point of every single one of them. But that is just the beginning. Because the frustration is not only about the heat, it is not only about the travel, it is not only about the extra match. It is about a sense that FIFA has stopped listening, that the governing body has decided what is safe, what is fair, what is acceptable, and then refused to revisit those decisions even when the men actually playing the matches stand up and say, something is wrong. A one-size-fits-all approach in a tournament that spans climates, altitudes, time zones, and cultures. As if a noon kickoff in a desert city carries the same demand as an evening match in a coastal stadium. as if a team flying 3,000 miles between group stage games has the same recovery profile as a team based an hour away from the next venue. The numbers do not lie. The conditions are not equal, and yet the rules pretend they are. Before we go any deeper, if this is the kind of investigation you have been searching for, the kind of coverage that pulls back the curtain on what really happens inside the biggest events in sport, subscribe and turn on notifications. What is coming next is the part most outlets will not touch, and you do not want to miss a second of it. Here is where it changes completely. Because the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that this crisis did not begin in 2026. It began years ago. In boardrooms, in television deals, in commercial calendars stacked so high that the sport itself bent under the weight. The European season has grown longer. The Champions League has expanded. New club competitions have been added. International windows have multiplied. The summer break, once sacred, once the lifeline that allowed a footballer to return human in August, has shrunk to almost nothing. And now, at the end of that brutal cycle, players are asked to deliver the greatest performance of their careers in conditions no athlete should be asked to face. Sit with that. The men we expect to dazzle us, to dance through defenders, to score the goals that will be replayed for 100 years, are arriving to this stage already half broken by the system that built the stage in the first place. And then there is the human cost. Think of the young star carried off the pitch in his very first World Cup match, clutching a hamstring that surrendered under the heat. Think of the veteran captain, the one who promised his country one more run, watching from the bench because his body simply could not absorb the schedule. Think of the goalkeeper diving on burning turf, the midfielder cramping in the 75th minute, the striker who has scored 40 goals this season and now cannot find the net because his legs have nothing left to give. These are not abstractions. These are real men, real careers, real moments that will define lives. And they are being shaped not by talent, not by tactics, not by courage, but by conditions that should never have been allowed to dictate the outcome. Spain feels it, Argentina feels it, Brazil feels it, and quietly, so do the others. France, England, Germany, Portugal, the Netherlands. Every nation that arrived believing this was their year is now confronting a tournament that punishes ambition, punishes depth, punishes the very pursuit of greatness. The favorites are not just fighting one another, they are fighting the calendar, they are fighting the climate, they are fighting the geography. They are fighting a format that grew too large, too fast, and refused to listen to the warnings. Zoom out and the meaning becomes unmistakable. This was supposed to be the greatest World Cup of all time, the crown jewel of a sport on top of the world. Instead, it is becoming a referendum on what football has allowed itself to become. A referendum on whether the men who govern the game still remember the men who play it. A referendum on whether spectacle has finally overtaken sport. The promise was glory. The reality is survival. The promise was celebration. The reality is exhaustion. The promise was the biggest tournament ever. The reality is a warning the entire sport will be forced to confront when the final whistle blows. And maybe that is the truth nobody wanted spoken out loud. That the favorites are not afraid of each other. They are afraid of the tournament. They are afraid of the heat. They are afraid of the schedule. They are afraid that whoever lifts this trophy will do so not because they were the best, but because they were the last ones still standing. So what do you think? Is this still the beautiful game we fell in love with? Or has the pursuit of more finally cost us something we cannot get back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us which nation you believe can survive this gauntlet. Like this video if you want more investigations like this one. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. And remember this when the dust settles and a champion is crowned. They did not just beat 11 men on a field. They beat a tournament that was trying to beat them first. And that, more than any trophy, is the real story of the 2026 World Cup.